Setting up your YouTube.
It says meeting is now streaming live on YouTube on my screen. Look at that.
All right. Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to this thing that I'm calling now Fridays at Noon, brought to you by me. I'm Cesar Abade. I'm the host of the Project Management for the Masses podcast. You might be familiar with that show. And it's now, what is it, March now of 2021. We're still in pandemic mode. So this is another attempt to bring some content to you and some interesting conversations. So in order to not overthink this and launch, I decided to keep this casual and start talking with good friends of mine who would be willing to give it a go with me. And so, of course, I reached out to Tracy Duez, my friend and partner in crime, for a long time now. And we'll talk for about 30 minutes. And then I might put this as also as part of the podcast as well. So if you miss this or if you don't like video, you can also listen to this on the podcast feed. So Tracy, how are you?
I am doing great. This is kind of fun and a little nerve-wracking since, we haven't done it before, but we'll get through it because
we'll get through it.
Yeah. So how about you?
I'm doing great. It is Friday, and I chose Friday at noon on purpose because Fridays tend to be a bit more calm and it's lunchtime. And it's, as you know, I started a new role within Automatic back in January. So I've just now finished onboarding. So it's been a couple of weeks that been a bit intense. Let's put it that way. But it's great. There's a lot of projects, a lot of project management stuff going on, and it's exciting. And
nice.
How about you? What's going on with you?
Well, as a speaker, this has not been the best of times. It hasn't been the worst of times either. But yeah, I'm still talking to people, but mainly this way, right? Virtually, instead of getting out there and getting the free chicken dinners at PMI meetings and things like that, right? I do miss my PMI chicken now more than I ever thought that I would. But and that interaction, right? I can't wait till that all comes back soon. So
right. So Tracy, how did you get into project management in the first place? And I don't ask how long ago was that, but it was a few years ago. Right?
It was a few years ago, and just like most people, I mean, I came out of the womb like just waiting to be a project manager, right? No, no one has ever said that to me, by the way. I mean, maybe younger kids nowadays can say that, but project management, what was that? Nobody knew. So how did I get into project management? Of course, my boss told me that's what I was going to do. Isn't that how a lot of people get into it? Yeah. Yeah. And I still remember it. His name was Kyle. And he's like, Tracy, you're going to manage this project, and Gary is going to be one of your developers. And Gary really needs to be managed well. He knew I never managed a project before, but Gary, I had no idea what that meant. And then it just took off from there. So that was a long time ago, in the early 90s, I believe. Yeah.
Wow. Now, did you feel like you were, you knew what to do, and this is like, hey, I'm going to be good at this at some point?
No.
No.
No. I felt I just had to be good at BS for a long time, like till I figured it out, right? And I didn't even know where to go, right? I didn't know there was a PMI. I didn't know, and I couldn't Google it because there was no Google, or what. I mean, there was, but it didn't have the stuff, right, that you can find today out there. So I just had to try and call people on the phone and hope they answered, because, well, we didn't have voicemail either. Or I could have tried to page them, because I did have a pager at the time. But to ask different questions, right? And so it all had to be that, try to find a mentor, try to find somebody who can help you along while you're doing that. And frankly, sometimes I even relied on the client to kind of tell me, hey, what is it that you need? Oh, you need to know this by this day and this time. So, okay, now that, and just put everything in a spreadsheet, as we project managers know.
Yeah.
Mhm.
The accidental project manager. And I think this is a term, right? Like I'm sure you've heard it before. And I think there's a book with that title, maybe.
Yeah, there
Yeah.
is. Yeah.
Because I think, like you said, it's not something that we want to be when we grow up. It's not like, firefighter, pilot, police officer, doctor, project manager.
Right. No.
It's not one of those things. It just kind of
No.
happens to you. And
Yeah.
it's same with me. I was going to be working at the family business, and my dad's a project manager. And it was time for us to make business cards for me. And I didn't have a title. I was going to do everything. I don't know. And and we had to put something on the card. And he's like, I think project manager is the best, the closest thing you're going to be doing here. So like, all right, sounds cool. It's fresh out of university, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't until a few years later that I decided to kind of look into the industry. Hey, there is a whole body of knowledge around this. I don't need to reinvent the wheel every time. And there's a
Yeah.
certification, and started studying for that. And in the process of studying, I was learning even more. And actually, it was what triggered me to start podcasting and blogging about project management, because this is useful stuff,
Yeah.
and it was helping me. So yeah, and I think those listening or watching right now, they probably will have a similar story of how they got started, or if they're trying to get started, don't be surprised if that's how it goes. Somebody will approach you with, hey, we need somebody to make this one thing happen, and we have a deadline and a budget. Can you do this for us? Guess what? You're a project manager.
That's that's right. So you were like an appointed project manager. You were just
Yeah.
like crowned project manager.
Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome.
Crowned project. Yeah.
I'm going to say crowned. Yeah. I
Okay,
wanted to make it royal, right? Like you were the prince, like your dad was the king, and then you became the prince of project management.
Right. And Prince is also a certification type. So you see, we come full circle.
Wow.
We're so good. All right. So now you work with project managers and also executives, right? As a coach.
Yeah. Yes.
Do
So
you feel like that was a good transition for you? Do you use some of those skills in the job that you do right now, or not?
yeah, absolutely. In running my own business, of course, there's all kinds of projects that you have to manage, and yeah, and making that transition, it's interesting because I didn't know that's where I was going to go. I really just wanted to help people and get them to learn and grow. I was a director of an IT consulting company after my project, so I managed project managers, and then I started to realize that there's a lot of really talented, gifted project managers out there. They understand the system or the book of knowledge, or they have their own systems, and they're really good at getting stuff done. It's just that sometimes people don't want to work with them. And when you're the director of an IT consulting company and you have project managers that your developers don't want to work with, it's a really hard place to be as you're assigning talent to different projects, right? And so I just started looking for ways in that role to help project managers understand about the value that they're delivering. And it's not just to the client, but it's also to the team and every stakeholder. Now that that PMI talks about the stakeholders and stuff in the book of knowledge, it's really been good, because that's sort of what I was fighting in those days with my team.
Yeah, it is a lot easier to deliver on these projects or whatever is asked of you if people want to work with you and people enjoy working with you. And that is a skill set that is not taught in school, or even at home. I don't, and I really believe that little things like learning to read a room, figure out, okay, what's happening? Where do I fit in here? when to say something, when not to say something. And this is like one of the most underrated skills you can have. And it's so hard to teach that, right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And it all comes from, for me, and from what I learned, it all came down to not the leadership of the group per se, b- but your leadership in what you just said, Caesar. It's about, okay, wait, should I say something? Should I not say something? Right? Where's my place here? What does this look like? How can I help get this moving forward faster? How can I help deliver the value that we want to deliver? And again, not just to the client, but to each other. That's a different mindset, right? In terms of project management, which isn't just about listing the task and making sure the Gantt chart is right or something like that.
Right. And one thing I don't know if you want to give it away because, you still do talks and stuff, but one of my favorite lines from when I watched you talk for the first time, or the only time actually, it's when we met.
Yeah, when we
You
met.
talked about speaking in public and how important that was for a project manager to be able to do that, and how you figured out why for you it was so hard to speak in public. Do you remember that?
Yeah, yeah. Well, of course. I mean, it's part of the reason why I do what I do.
Uh-huh.
Um, it, I so I was so afraid to speak in front of people. I mean, I was been told since I was little, don't talk to strangers,
That's it.
right? Right? I mean, my
That's the
mom,
line.
right? My mom, she told me from when I was just a teeny tiny little baby, and I was her oldest. She had me when she was 18. She got married when she was 17. I have to say that since this is live on YouTube and all. And my dad watches YouTube now like all the time, so he might watch it. But
Right.
so she had me when she was 18. Then she had my sister Shelly 362 days later. So that's kind of cool. We're the same age for 3 days.
Wow.
And then she had my sister Chrissy like a year and a half after that. And then my sister Marcy came along too. And so she had 4 girls by the time I think she was 23 when she had Marcy.
Wow.
And so we would go to the A&P grocery store, and she would tell us, like, don't talk to strangers because, well, there were strangers around, and she didn't want her oldest, smartest, and prettiest daughter to be taken from the grocery store or wander off. So you get this thought in your head of don't talk to strangers, and you think it over and over and over again. And so strangers become bad, and then just my family's good. So whenever I had to speak, even in like an elementary school or heaven forbid, high school, and then college, oh my gosh, no, I never spoke in college because that was it just stirred up a whole bunch of emotions for me that weren't good feeling emotions. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And so I mean, that's all part of the thinking that's inside of our brains, that we have to become a better leader of our own selves in order to overcome that.
Right.
So, yeah.
It's funny because for me, it's always been the opposite. Give me an opportunity to go up on the stage, and even
Right.
and I'll take it. In high school, I was the whatever you call it in the States, but the person who does the speech for the class, for the graduating class.
Yeah.
And because nobody wanted to do it, right? Actually, there was one person who wanted to do it, but nobody liked her, and so somebody suggested, hey, we need another person, maybe we can have like a vote. So I was like, maybe I'll put my name in there, and then everybody voted for me, not because they wanted me, but because they didn't want that. Yeah, but that's a different story. I hope
We've seen elections here in this country like that too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We understand how people get elected sometimes, Caesar.
So that's how my public speaking career started. But it makes so much sense, and I think that being a project manager, working in projects, right, when sometimes you have to stand up and speak.
Yeah.
And so do you find that that's an issue that a lot of people have to face at some point? Okay, how to do this better?
Yeah, it's a lot. I think it is an issue a lot of people have to face. And for me, I didn't know what to do about it, right? People would just say, "Oh, change your attitude." What are you talking? I don't know how do you change your attitude? Like,
Yeah.
I'll be more than happy to do that. Just show me how to do that. I mean, I know how to change my clothes, right? I know how to change my address. I don't have any idea how to change my attitude. And so being able to figure that out. And that's when I stumbled upon the axiology, which I now teach everywhere I can go, because it changed everything for me. It helps you change the way that you think, not just what you do. And that's what was really powerful when I recognized what my thinking strength was. So I really ended up having some low self-esteem because I didn't have any friends. Because I don't know if you know this or not, Caesar, but before your friends are your friends, they're actually usually strangers.
That is true. That's
And
a
I
good
didn't
point.
talk to it. And I didn't talk to
And you
any of
didn't talk
them.
to strangers. Yeah.
So I didn't have any friends. Right. And so being able to understand it, how you think, and maybe what some of your talents are, thinking talents, not doing talents, but thinking talents. And one of mine was nurturing other people. And I got this assessment back and I was like, nurturing, I don't even like people. Right. Meaning I'm afraid of them. I like them. And
Yeah.
I thought, what if that's really true? What if I could do that? And so then I learned how to think from that perspective. And from then on, it's easy. When you learn to use your strengths, the stuff that you do becomes a lot easier. And I think that
Mhm.
that's, when you saw me speak there live, it's just so much fun going to different places and talking to strangers, because then they become
Which
your
is what you
friends.
do for a living now. Yeah. It's amazing.
It's what I do for a living.
So, yeah. So that was, I had a question for you right then, and now it escaped me. But to be able to do that, so when you get up to speak, right?
Yeah.
Um, what do you find like? Oh yeah, I know what I was going to ask. You mentioned axiology and the strengths and stuff. And one thing that I read at one point that completely changed my mindset about all this is that, you come from the educational system where there's standards, right? You have to pass
Yeah.
this. In fact, I was just talking to my daughter because she was a bit upset about her math situation. And I was telling her a story of what happened to me when I was in high school. When I almost failed the class and almost failed the entire year because of that class. But what happens, like, what's expected of you, it's exactly what's expected of everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're not strong in math, for example, if you don't like it, you still need to figure out a way to level up and pass, right?
Yeah.
Which is, I guess it's good at a certain level. We need to know the basics of things. But I think sometimes we grow up with this inability to be able to focus on the things that we are good at, or dedicate time to them, and you become
Right.
even better. I call them like your little superpower. What's your superpower? We all have one, right?
Right.
Um, so and I took the axiology assessment a few years ago,
Yeah.
that you offer. And that thing was amazing to me because I've taken these personality tests before and they all kind of like the same. You have to answer some questions and you can tell by the questions where they're going with it, right?
Yeah.
Do you prefer talking to strangers or do you prefer sitting at home watching a movie? Do you prefer, do you like parties or do you like being by yourself? I say, oh, if I answer this, then they're going to put me in this category here, right? But
Right.
the test that you gave me, it's like, I don't understand where this is going. And the answers are not, I don't remember exactly here, and you can correct me, but be like, if given the choice, do you prefer sitting on the floor or smelling a flower? Like it's not, they're not competing things.
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
have to kind of choose, okay, I don't know, I think I like this better. And then
Yeah.
at the end, you get this report that it is like incredible how precise and spot on it was for me, at least. And then it gives you this opportunity to look at these things that you're good at, that you value.
Yeah.
That's the other thing about values, right?
Yeah.
We all have values and we just assume that the rest of the world think the same way. Like, for example, I'm a person of faith, so I believe that there's a God, and some people think that's totally bananas.
Right.
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 And I
Yeah.
think that's so, and you have to work with these folks, right?
Or
And
you can cancel them. You can cancel them
you can
these days.
cancel.
which is crazy, right? No, we can actually have a dialogue. Yes, you have to work with them.
But it wasn't until I took that that I really started thinking about that. Okay, we are operating in this world with folks who are good people, and yet they think completely different than you, and you have to get this done together, right?
Yeah.
So how do you find the common ground? And how do you position yourself so you can be of service to people that don't see eye to eye with you, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and that's interesting that you say that, because the assessment that you took, that's exactly what we ask you to do. We have 2 sets of 18 items, and we ask you to value them, the best at the top and the worst at the bottom. And they're weird things, right? Like a good meal, a technical improvement, mathematical genius, or blowing up an airliner in flight is also one of them. So there's some really bad things on the list and some good things. And you're like, what does this have to do with anything? Right. And being able to figure out where your strengths lie, and then focusing on focusing on those. When we were in school, I always found it very interesting that when you had a test, they would scratch through the ones that you got wrong, or mark the ones that you got wrong in red, and do nothing with the ones you got right.
Mm.
I
Right.
mean, right? And then, then they'd grade you or whatever, and maybe put a star on your paper in elementary school or something. But your attention was always drawn to what was wrong. And I think today that's what happens sometimes when we value different things. We don't take a look at how that value supports. Like, I don't take a look if I don't believe in God, which I do, but if I didn't, I don't look at how that belief and that value of yours adds and creates value in your life. I'm looking at how I don't agree with it. Well, what does that have anything to do with your belief and your value? And it's about stepping into a place where you can look and see and generate more value based on a difference. And it's especially differences that don't really impact you that much.
Right.
Right.
And, I went to school for engineering, and we learned about potential energy and stuff. And it's in the difference that the magic happens, right? You have a plus pole on the battery and a negative pole, and you connect them, and you get a big boom. So I think there's a lot of energy you can create with folks who are different than you that you wouldn't be able to if with the person sitting next to your church, because you think exactly the same and whatever, right?
Yeah.
And I think if you can channel that, channel thinking of your values in that way, like, okay, how can I create some magic with this person who is very different than me? And then I think that's how you can find it. But again, like you said, we're not used to doing anything with the right answers that we get, right?
Right. Yeah. And so we end up focusing, I think it's Dan Sullivan who talks about the gap and the gain. And so we're looking at the wrong answers. We're looking at the gap rather than the gain. And we're not measuring to the gain that we're making and that we're progressing. We're measuring to the gap, which is the end goal that we have. And look, we should be further along and all this. No, let's first look and see how far we've come and the gains that we've made, which will provide us with that energy and the impetus to say, hey, look, we've done this together already. We can still get there. Yeah, we might have some differences here, or we might agree on the path forward to take, but let's just pick one. Let's just keep going. And then we'll look back again and measure our progress. And if we should make a change, an iteration, let's do that. But people don't want iterations anymore. They want perfection right out the gate. And I think that gets so messy for us.
Right. I agree.
Right.
So a couple of questions, and I'm honestly, I don't know. Is that assessment still available, and is it still complimentary? Can people still go and take it?
Yes. Yeah. And actually, I've even added to it a little bit. So people can still take it. And they also will get a free online course that shows them how to use their results.
Ooh, I
So
didn't get that one.
I know it's like 4 15-minute videos or so.
Okay.
But it shows you how to use it. Because I'm a very practical, logical person. And one of the things I want people to do is actually use their results. So, because that's the only way it actually changes their life. So yes, like we can put a link below this, but it's pretty simple. They can just go to my VQs, like V is in value and Q is in quotient, myvqs.com. And if they put a backslash or slash, is that a slash or
it's a slash, I think.
It's a slash, slash PM for TM, the number 4. They can, we'll know that they came from here.
Okay.
We can just,
I'll add this to the description below after this is done. And if you're listening to the podcast, I'll put it on the show notes for this episode. Because it's there. You can take. I think when did we do that interview, Tracy? 2013 or something. When we first talked about this.
Episode 2 of your
episode 2 of the podcast.
Of the podcast, yeah. Then we got together and did some more too. Around 100, we got.
That's right. We did a series there, but that one, I think there's still people going in there and listening and taking the assessment, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. At least a couple a week or so. So
that's amazing.
It is.
Yeah, it's odd because I get these emails all the time. At least once a week, I get an email or somebody connects with me on LinkedIn. Say, hey, I found you and I found your podcast, and I went back to episode 1, and I'm listening from the beginning. And I'm like, oh, because I'm a podcast listener, and I don't do that. I find a podcast I like, I start with the latest, and I go forward, right?
Right.
But a lot of people do that. They go back to the beginning, and if they do that, episode 2 is going to be my first conversation with you. And then I think we go deeper into axiology and what it means and values. And that is at pmforthemasses.com/2 for episode 2. I also have a link here. Mm-hmm.
Before we go though, I wanted to ask, since this is the first one of this, what prompted you? Like what's to do this, to go onto YouTube Live? What were you looking for?
Well, I like to create content, and I like to speak to strangers, like I said. But and I've been doing the podcast, and the pandemic hit, and I think we all, especially about a year ago when this whole thing started, I think we all got to thinking, how can we help? They're asking us to stay home and do nothing, which is the most helpful thing you could do at the time. And but then you think, even from home, what can I do, right? And I already had the podcast, and I said, I'll create more content for the podcast because people are at home; they need to spend their time. And I did that. I did more episodes than what I had been doing at that point, and it got to a point that what else can I do? And then I started toying this idea, maybe YouTube, maybe going live, because I'm used to recording and then doing some editing and cutting things and doing things live is a bit more scary, more, they see the real you. So I started thinking about that. So I don't want to create a whole new thing. What can I do that is semi-ready? And then I started to think about what is it that I can bring to people. I always talk about the fact that I'm not like the biggest expert in project management. I'm just a practitioner that likes to talk on the microphone. But one thing that I have, and I accumulated over the years, especially because of the podcast, is my relationships, my connections, right? So I can bring Tracy Duez to my audience whenever I want,
Yeah. While
if they were to talk to you on the phone, you probably cost them a few bucks, and so I have that power. That's one of my superpowers, I guess. So because of the podcast, I read a book and I say, wow, this is a really good book. I'd love to talk to this author. I have that opportunity. I can reach out and everybody says yes, right? So maybe I can bring these friends and relationships that I built over the years to YouTube so I can introduce them if they haven't been a guest on the show yet. But even if they have, show the human side of what they do and where they come from, how they started and how they think about things, and what they're doing right now while they're working from home or trying to work from home. So that's the gist, and this is the result. It's just in the end, it's just a casual conversation for 30 minutes with a friend, and hopefully that's going to spill over and benefit other folks.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think we share is just that passion to help people get to where they want to go in their lives. And you know, and the vehicle was project management, right? Because that's what we know and what we do. And just being able to add that value to their lives in some way. I mean, and for you, I just want you to know, I love what you do. I mean, the folks that you have on your podcast, like when David Allen was on, he's episode number 1, right?
Yeah, or
Getting
3. I
things
think
done,
he
or
came out. Yeah,
somewhere. Yeah,
early.
somewhere
Yeah.
at the very beginning as well. And then even lately when you had who was it, Near on with Undistractable? Was that one of the books that you had read?
Undistractable. Yeah.
Yeah.
Indistractable. Yeah.
Indistractable. Yeah, that's it. And so those things, I mean, I listen to it too. And those are just so, I just really appreciate what you do. And I just wanted to let you know. So it's good
Thank
to
you.
be here.
Thank you, Tracy. And for those, you know, outside of our circle of 2 here, you and I talk all the time. We have a texting relationship, and every once in a while we'll get on a Zoom and chit chat about different things. So we're more than just, you know, co-hosts or partners. We're good friends. And in fact, last time we talked about the fact that it's too bad that we don't live closer, because it'd be great to hang out. And I think my family would really get a kick out of you.
Yeah. Likewise. So
All right.
Thanks a lot,
Yeah.
Cesar.
So if people want to learn more about you, Tracy, besides doing that assessment, where should they go? Are you on social media, or where are you?
I am on social media. LinkedIn is the main platform that I'm on, and you can find me, Tracy Duez, Duez. I'm the only one out there. So you can pretty much find me there. You can find me on Facebook and Twitter, I guess, but I don't go to those. I don't scroll through that. Oh, and I'm on Clubhouse now too.
Oh, Clubhouse. Maybe we can talk about that next time. Maybe we can do like a both YouTube and Clubhouse streaming next time.
Let's try. Yeah, we could do that. That would be fun.
Sounds good. Right. And for me, you can find me at pmforthemasses.com. I'm on social media, on Twitter, LinkedIn, and Twitter and LinkedIn at Cesar Abeid. And you can find links to all those things at pmforthemasses.com. Tracy, you're awesome. Thank you so much for participating. And well, I'll see you next Friday with the third guest. Maybe.
What the heck? Let's try it again. If you want to, if you invite me back. Now, if there's comments below this video saying, what's she doing here? Then it's back to you, Cesar. Your people love you. So
you're always welcome. You're always welcome. You can always join.
All right.
All right.